Dozens of families are reeling from the biggest aviation disaster in the US in 14 years. The American Airlines jet collided with a Black Hawk in Washington, killing 67 people on board the two aircraft. The passenger jet was on its final approach into Ronald Reagan National when it collided with the chopper as it conducted military training. Authorities are unclear as to what caused the collision. It's understood the American Airlines plane was asked by air traffic controls to land at a shorter runway moments before the impact. At least of the black boxes has been recovered and will no doubt be crucial to investigations. Donald Trump is blaming diversity and inclusion policies.
In the skies over Washington, the moment of impact caught on camera. The horrifying collision between an American Airlines jet and a military helicopter over the nation's capital.
Crash. This is alert 3. Crash. This is alert 3.
Air traffic control radar captured the moment the paths of the two aircraft crossed. Hundreds of emergency personnel were called into action. Teams from DC, from Virginia, and from Maryland converging on a freezing night on the banks of the Potomac. Divers spent the night in the frigid water of the river, scouring the area for survivors. It was at this stage a rescue, but given what the cameras had caught, a rescue based more on hope than expectation. And by the early hours of the morning, the news no officials ever want to share.
Despite all those efforts, we are now at a point where we are switching from a rescue operation to a recovery operation. At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident.
As the sun rose over the Potomac, the debris was visible, with questions now turning to how the crash was able to happen in one of the most controlled parts of American airspace. Well, the rescue turned recovery continues out there beyond the runway on the banks of the Potomac. It is a very, very challenging operation. The rescue teams are operating in freezing waters. The airport itself has now reopened, but the investigation is still in its very early stages. This is, of course, a huge first challenge for the new Trump administration. And from the White House, the president spoke.
This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly.
But then, with his new defense secretary listening, he sought to apply his view.
We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
Pointing first at the military crew.
The people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there.
And then at the air traffic controllers, claiming this national tragedy is the consequence of a woke recruitment policy.
The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine?
You're trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
The conjecture from the president will be in stark contrast to the methodical investigation that is already underway. Experts at the scene alongside the recovery teams. All as the search for those who died continues along a debris field that is widening with strong currents and winds. It is America's worst aviation accident in over 2 decades.